What's going on, guys? SasDood here. You can just call me Sas. I hope everyone is having a great day. Today's game review is on Tormented Souls, a 2021 survival horror-like game that pays homage to the older survival horror games like Resident Evil and Silent Hill. I came across this game when it first launched 4 years ago in 2021 from a couple of YouTubers who were showcasing this game. I didn't pay much attention to it at the time, as I was playing other games and wasn't interested. Fast forward to 4 years later, I saw that it was $3 on CD Keys /loaded, and I decided to take the plunge into this game, following my distaste at what modern Resident Evil has devolved into, and generally how disappointing and low effort the modern survival horror genre has become as a whole. I grew up playing all the classics, and Tormented Souls advertises itself as a Resident Evil /Silent Hill-like game. A sequel launched not too long ago as of the making of this video in 2025, and I wanted to go into a little bit of the developer's history before we move on to the game itself. Dual Effect Games is a Chilean studio responsible for this game, and P-Cube is the publisher. P-Cube is known for publishing games such as the Galgun games, Shantae Half Genie Hero, Under Night In-Birth, and BlazBlue, along with a multitude of other games. Dual Effect has only worked on 2 games so far, Tormented Souls 1 and Tormented Souls 2, and is a small studio consisting of what seems to be about 4 or so people from what I've seen floating around on the World Wide Web. Let's get to the story synopsis. There will be a little bit of story spoilers for some of the story and some of the mechanics in this game and whatnot, so click away if you don't want to be spoiled, but there's not going to be too much. The game starts off with our female protagonist, Caroline Walker, receiving a letter from an abandoned hospital that has a picture of 2 mysterious twin girls with the caption questioning why she has abandoned them. She remarks that she feels something familiar about these 2 girls and goes to the abandoned mansion /sanatorium /hospital to find them and rescue them. In the process of investigating the matter, she's knocked out, dragged away, later waking up in a bathtub naked, with her right eye missing and hooked up to a respirator. She pulls it out, gets dressed, and explores the haunted hospital to find the answers to the 2 missing girls. It's mostly a solo adventure with Caroline, mostly by herself, learning about the background and history of the Willberger family and its close relatives, and their ties to the hospital and the horror within. As she learns more and more about the hospital, she meets Father Noah, a priest who is seemingly unaware of the horrors happening inside the building. He frequently gives her hints and key items to help advance the player's progress. Like I said, we mostly learn through diary entries about the Willberger family, such as William and his wife Maria, William's grandfather, Maria's experiences with miscarriages, the raisings and happenings of Anna and Emma Williams, etc., etc. About the sound design / music. I would say the sound design and music is competent, but not super well done when in regard to its peers from the past. Near the beginning, when the voiceover plays, the audio mixing on the voice is a little weird, with the music being louder than the voice. Some monster sounds only play when you're close, which leads to them sneaking up on you sometimes, which can lead to some frustration. The battle music loops pretty frequently as well, and is a mixture of ambient sound and industrial noise, but all the sounds make sense and hammer into your brain pretty distinctly as to what they are. I particularly like the typewriter sound on the text, or the noise for the inventory, or the sound design of the tape recorder when you go to save. For the music, only 2 soundtracks stood out to me. The save room music, which is reminiscent of earlier Resident Evil and Silent Hill type of save room music, and the chapel / heavenly theme. Both are fantastic, very calm, and are a joy to listen to. The battle music can get your pulse up when in a battle, especially when you are repositioning and trying not to get hit. And the ambient music when exploring can really get you in the mood to be scared and really builds up the tension. Although I really can't remember them after playing the game. The 2 songs that I mentioned earlier are really the high points for the soundtrack, and the rest are par for the course for a game inspired by its contemporaries. Let's talk about the controls, the UI, the combat, and the gameplay loop. The game plays like your typical old school Resident Evil, Silent Hill, Delca type of game. The game modernizes the formula somewhat with the addition of being able to access both tank controls, which is relegated to the D-pad, and modern 360 analog movement as seen in most modern survival horror games on the thumbstick. I use the analog to play as I found the default walk speed to be too slow on the D-pad, and that Caroline doesn't run by default on the tank controls. You have to hold down a button while walking. But usually when it comes to these old games, I prefer tank or analog. We have the old school UI with tabs separating your key items in the first tab, weapons and resources in the second tab, and files in the third tab. You can examine items and combine them. You can also reload in the menu, similar to the older Resident Evil games, if you don't want to reload in real time. And you can also mess with the items in the exam menu in a 3D space. Some items themselves are a puzzle, requiring you to mess around with their various parts before you can use them correctly, and sometimes you just have to spam click them on the object you're using to see if they work or not, or to see which parts move. The gameplay loop is quite simple. You explore the mansion, hoard the multitudes of items in your inventory, examine them, fight the monsters, read the lore, do the puzzles, fight some more, puzzle solve more, and the loop continues. Combat is stand and shoot. You can't move while shooting, although you have access to a dodge move when you aim down and press dodge, which gives iframes and is essential to get around the many enemies and questionable hitboxes they have. Onto the weapons. We have 4 weapons: the nailer, the crowbar, the shotgun, and the electric lance. The nailer has 10 rounds, lots of bullets for it scattered around, and it's mainly for the smaller enemies. When you shoot the smaller enemies, it takes around 6 bullets to put them down. After 6 or so bullets, they kind of do a little flip, they get knocked down, and this is where the crowbar comes in. Similar to Resident Evil 4 and some of the older Resident Evil games, the crowbar is like the knife from those types of games, and just like the melee weapon designs from those games, you knock them down with the nailer, shotgun, or electric lance, and whack them 4 or so times with the crowbar, saving some ammo. The shotgun can be potentially missed and requires you to combine 2 parts, which are quite plainly in your face and easy to find, but I have to say that it can be missed if you aren't paying real close attention. It only has 1 shot, packs a punch at close range, and knocks every enemy down in 1 shot. It doesn't have too long of a manual reload, but after the knock, run in and whack them with your crowbar a couple of times or switch to your nailer to finish them. Remember, switching to your secondary is always faster than reloading. Electric Lance is the 4th and final weapon and can be completely missed as it is optional. It uses electric rounds and has 3 shots before reloading. It requires you to be up close in melee range, different from the shotgun, and I think it does a little bit less damage because usually I'll take an enemy out in 2 shots with a shotgun, but sometimes it takes all 3 lance charges with the electric lance. I do have to tell you that you can either reload in-game and go through the process of reloading. None of the reloads are super long, but when I was playing the game, I usually just reloaded in the menu because that's what I'm used to when playing these types of survival horror games. The enemy design is not varied at all and is quite generic. Only a few enemies stand out from the rest, but that's not saying much as the enemy variety is quite few. You have these upper torso guys who kind of just move around on the floor. They swipe at you up close and they spit blood at you from a distance. They're easy to take out, but they can sneak up on you due to them being small and because some of the camera angles are poorly thought out and are poorly designed. Usually 6 or so shots knock them down with the nailer, and you can whack them 2 or 3 times with the crowbar to kill them. The next monster we have is the wheelchair monster, who acts like Mr. X or Nemesis from Resident Evil. He relentlessly chases you in the area and can't be killed. Using your ammo on him just stuns him for a couple of seconds. After that, we have the slider/IV pole guys. They whack you with their crutches or hit you with a porcupine-like attack up close. Same as the small dudes. Just dodge them when they're about to attack you, shoot them, then whack them with the crowbar when they're down. Next, we have the wall monster, which is just a random dude stuck to the wall that slashes at you. You can't run past and are forced to shoot or whack him to get past. The slasher is next, and he's a taller and tankier enemy than the 3 enemies before, with the exception of the wheelchair monster. But the procedure is the same. You hit him with the shotgun, and then you whack him when he's on the floor. We then have our second chaser enemy, which is the ghost enemy. It takes the place of the wheelchair monster in the second half of the game. It's immortal. It chases you. It appears in the second half of the game, and a music sting plays when it's in the room with you, but all you have to do is just walk in and walk out of the room and reset the room, and then it'll disappear. It grabs you, a QTE plays, and you have to mash to get out. Last enemy in the game is the Atomic Man, a human-like enemy in a radiation suit that swings the hammer. He's probably the tankiest enemy in the game. No, for sure he's the tankiest enemy in the game. You can bait his attacks by running in and out of his range, and he's probably the most scariest enemy in the game, I feel. When it comes to the actual design of the enemies, most of the enemies besides the Atomic Man is a fusion of metal and skin. They are severely disfigured from constant experimentation and medical procedures, and a few such as the Wheelchair Man, the Atomic Man, and the Slider are genuinely terrifying. The rest fall into not very scary or generic, and to be honest, the ghost enemy is the least scary and most funny looking monster even when you know who that is lore wise. The ghost is also more of an annoyance than an actual threat, as reloading the room gets rid of it. I don't really understand the vision there with the ghost enemy. Overall, the enemy design is serviceable, and the only questionable enemy is the ghost enemy due to how easy they are to avoid and skip past. When it comes to the puzzles suck. I can't really sugarcoat it, and it's very much a common pain point amongst those who play the game and in reviews. A good majority of them are too hard or make no sense. A few of them are alright / understandable, and the rest are good. Overall, the ratio of bad to good is skewed heavily towards the bad puzzles. The good puzzles are the poem puzzle with the buns, where you have to read the poem and press the buns on the body where the poem talks about. We have the Tetris key puzzle, which is alright. The alien pyramid puzzle is good, and the number line puzzle makes sense, even though some people struggled with the number line puzzle. The cash register puzzle confused me for a little bit, but makes sense when I found out the solution, as does the generator puzzle in the beginning and the Simon Says puzzle with the vending machine. The music puzzle I'll give a pass on, but I have bad hearing and I can't really differentiate the tones that well. So every survival horror game that has music puzzles I very much struggle with, and I hate music puzzles, but I think it's like an okay type of puzzle. The worst puzzles in the game are the broken vase key puzzle, which was just confusing because you have to make the shapes. You have to guess the shapes on the key to the shapes on the door with a few pieces, and it was just weird. The infinite room puzzle, which requires outside real world knowledge for one of the doors and goes on for far too long. And if you mess up, you get sent back straight to the beginning, which means it's basically trial and error for most of the puzzle, and it takes a long time. The gas puzzle is alright, but can take an extremely long time because you have to put the pipe caps on and you have to follow the lines and things like that. It was difficult for me, and I did have to look up a solution for the gas puzzle. I had to look up solutions for many of these puzzles, but I understand what I did wrong with that puzzle. The grandfather clock puzzle makes a lot of sense until you realize the solution is not in the game and requires outside knowledge. The monkey judge puzzle is obtuse, and I can see it working. I understand what they're trying to go for with that puzzle, but that puzzle sucks. The TV dial puzzle makes no sense to me, even with the included hint in the diary and flipping the channels and things like that. The floppy disk puzzle with adding and subtracting the names, I think, is so insanely stupid, and every guide I've looked at has no explanation as to why the puzzle is that way. I have to gripe about a few of the puzzles. There's 3 puzzles in the game that make no sense in regards to the story either, because, for example, you get a mold for a key, and in the meeting room, or whatever it's called, you have to put a VHS tape in the VHS player. You have to go back in time through the projector and Earlier in the game, you got like a blood pack from the cash register puzzle. So what you do is you combine the blood pack and the mold together. You go to the kitchen in the past, you put the blood-filled mold into the freezer, and you go back in the present, and now it's frozen. This happens I think 2 or 3 more times with the battery, and then you have to pour some acid on a lock, and then you do an extra one with the reticle scanner, which, spoiler alert, the reticle scanner was kind of stupid because you go back in time and take your own eye out, which makes no sense story-wise or even time traveling-wise, because when you start the game, you wake up with your eye gone, but then you realize you need an extra eye for the reticle scanner at the end of the game, so you go back in time and take your eye out. But you started the game with your eye out already, so what does that mean? Did Caroline never get her eye cut out in the beginning of the game, and then she got to the puzzle, and then she went back in time to cut her own eye out? That makes no sense. That makes no sense. But it's whatever. The door knock puzzle was easy for me, but has a lot of discourse online, and trying to find that movable cabinet in the morgue was crazy. I thought I was going crazy because I could not. There was no like interactable button. There was no obvious thing except the blood on the floor, and it was in the dark, and I couldn't find where it was. I had to look up what to do in the morgue. I understand I'm not the smartest gamer, but I've beaten most of the classic survival horrors without a guide or help. I've only looked up a guide for this game and for Signalis, and both have crazy hard puzzles. There are more bad puzzles in the game than there are good/alright puzzles. The developer tried way too hard with them and should have included some sort of puzzle difficulty system a la Silent Hill or a hint guide. Especially in the second half, where the player is just overloaded with puzzles to the point of fatigue. You spend all your time on a difficult puzzle just to play for maybe 30 minutes or less, and then you get hit with another puzzle and it becomes a where the heck do I go or do type of game. Now that the rant about the puzzles is over, let's talk about the overall game balance, difficulty, and performance. The game has no autosaves and requires manual saving with the recording tape. At the beginning, the game is a little difficult as the resources are semi-scarce and you're still understanding the hospital layout and game design. As you get further along, the game showers you with plenty of healing and ammo, and pretty soon you have more things than you know what to do with, and you can't kill any more enemies as they don't respawn until halfway through. The real frustration and difficulty is not in the actual enemies, but in the puzzle design, and some of the awkward camera angles makes it hard to see the enemies and are poorly thought out. I imagine a lot of people drop this game around the 2 to 3 hour mark when you explored everywhere, are stuck in the puzzles, and you have seemingly random items that make no sense as to where you're supposed to put them. When it comes to the performance, I played on my Steam Deck at medium settings locked at 40 FPS, and the game runs alright for the most part. Sometimes when you get to the main hall, the game really starts to chug down to the lower 30 or 20 FPS, and near the end in the preparation room, when you're faced with a bunch of the atomic men, the frame rate dips down to 10 FPS, maybe a little bit more than that. So the optimization is a little bit hit or miss, and I don't truly understand why the optimization is like that for a game that is mostly closed, in a sense that there's not a lot of open areas, there's not a lot of enemies on screen, there's not a lot of things happening on the screen. So the game is okay when it comes to the optimization. It might be better on console, but like I said, I played on my Steam Deck, medium settings at 40 FPS. I was at 60 and I was still dropping frames even on the lower graphics settings, so I play every game at 40 FPS. But just be warned when it comes to the optimization, at least if you're playing on PC or on Steam Deck. Let's talk about the scare factor before we get to my overall thoughts. The game got a few good scares out of me, I can't lie, and builds tension well. There is only a singular jump scare in the game that I remember, and it got me good because I let my guard down, but it wasn't too loud. The main scare comes from the tension built up from exploring and the sound design. When you're exploring in the dark and you hear the metal scraping sounds of the wheelchair monster, or the sounds of the slider, or you walk up to the very first atomic man and his eyes light up, that's when the game shines. With the addition of the music sounding very industrial and inorganic, similar to the Silent Hill series soundtrack, most of the time you'll be scared of most rooms you enter. I thought that this game did a good job scaring me and building up that tension in the first half. The scariness falls off like most aspects of this game in the second half due to the over-reliance on combat and puzzles. It picks up back up again when you're exploring the underground catacombs / prison, but not for long. The Atomic Men design is also very scary in the second half as well. Now, final section of the game review is my overall thoughts. Tormented Souls does what it sets out to do, and that is to be a semi-competent Resident Evil / Silent Hill clone. However, lack of enemy variety, difficult and frustrating puzzle design in combination to questioning where to go a majority of the time drags this game down hard, especially in the second half where the puzzles become more frequent and more difficult as a substitute for actual gameplay. It's more of a puzzle game than it is a survival horror game, I think. It's a short game, clocking in at around 9 hours, which is when I finished the game, but like I said earlier, I suspect most people dropped it 2 to 3 hours in, when the gameplay loop kind of slows down and you're forced to just wander and struggle through the puzzles. A few of the music soundtracks are amazing and the sound design is well done, besides some questionable audio mixing. Combat is basic and bare bones, it gets the job done, and doesn't need to be anything more than it is. I liked some of the enemy designs and most of the areas. In particular, I liked the catacomb sections in the last hour to 2 hours of the game. The ending and the overall story of the game was quite predictable and anticlimactic, but I enjoyed piecing together the diaries and events as the game went on. The game frequently goes on sale for $5 on Steam, and you can even find it cheaper at around the $3 or so mark on sites like CD Keys / Loaded and Instant Gaming. I would recommend it only to hardcore fans of the genre who have no problems with the above mentioned pain points. From what I've seen, a lot of the more casual players of the genre were recommended this game, but were met with disappointment. I think even the more dedicated audience would find this game a bit harder to recommend. I do think it is one of the better survival horror likes on the market currently, and certainly the small team at Dual Effect Games had a fine first outing with Tormented Souls 1. The second game is currently out, and I hear it suffers from the same problems as the first game. I definitely will take a look at it as well sometime late into the future when it hits the bargain bin sale prices, but I'm in no rush to immediately play it. Anyways, that's the end of the game review. Thank you for watching, thank you for listening. If you wish to support my artwork and my videos, all my social media and payment / tipping links are in my profile. More videos and artwork will come regardless. Goodbye for now, guys.